Hey, Mommy, look, I drew this picture for you.
One of the best things about moms is the way they see our masterpieces. The perfect pony, the beautiful house. Moms see our best efforts exactly as we meant them to turn out, no matter what ends up on the paper. Thanks, moms, for always seeing greatness in us. Happy Mother's Day.
Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Doris Smith, and I am the Executive Director for Haven House, Inc. And I just want to welcome you all to Advocates for Change. And before we get into the discussion at hand, just have a couple of information to share with you all. So thank you so much once again for tuning in. I will be your moderator for today / host. Just want to give you just some quick information about Haven House Inc. We are a 24-hour emergency shelter. We provide residential and non-residential services. Let me put that information up on the screen in case you would like to contact us. So our 24-hour crisis line is 219-931-2090. So in terms of the services that we provide services for everyday, the essentials for everyday living. In addition to that, we provide crisis intervention, safety planning, advocacy, referrals. We also provide support groups as well. So you all, without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get into the program at hand. I want to just encourage you all to make sure that you share this information because you never know that there's someone out there that needs to hear the information that we are sharing on today. So let me just remove our information there. Also, let me just type in something really quick, you guys. Okay, great. Okay, so I have the great honor to introduce our speakers on today. So we have Sergeant Aubrey Thomas. And I have to say this to you all. I'm excited because the panel, the guests that we have today, they have so many years of experience. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our speakers on today. Sergeant Aubrey Thomas has been with the police department for 24 years. He has been a canine handler, canine trainer, supervisor, SWAT officer, SWAT canine, SWAT trainer, SWAT team, SWAT team leader, firearms instructor, narcotics detective, and currently he is the Hammond PD training coordinator. Wow, you guys, that is just amazing. Now I have the great honor, let me move back a little bit so you can see their names. Now I have the great honor of introducing Captain Calvin L. Cox. He has worked for the Hammond Police Department for 36 years. He was the captain of community affairs for the last 6 years. He worked as a patrolman, canine handler, canine trainer, supervisor, He was promoted to sergeant in the sector coordinator program. He has been a supervisor, field coordinator unit. He worked as a gang unit detective and gang unit supervisor, and he presently serves as the community affairs commander. And now, last but not least, definitely not least, I have the great honor of introducing Namia Cooper Miller. As a survivor of domestic violence and an eyewitness to abuse within her own family, Namia Cooper has a personal passion for empowering victims of abuse and educating the public about the signs of abuse, the impact of abuse on the family, and ways to break the cycle of violence. In 2006, she began Woman at the Well Ministry as an avenue to minister to the spiritual needs of the total woman, mind, body, and spirit. Under Women at the Well, Namia began a domestic violence support group to bring healing, restoration, and resources to women involved in domestic violence situations. Her previous work also included Indianapolis area community involvement and active volunteerism with the Julian Center and Colburn Place Shelter. She also has a passion for women and youth leadership development programs. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., where her work for the Indianapolis Alumni Chapter has included serving on the Delta Gems Committee, a mentoring program for at-risk high school age females, and chair of the Family Life Education, Domestic Violence, and Community Partnerships Committee. She currently serves as chair of sexual and domestic violence for the Gary Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. Namia holds an Associate of Science in Computer Technology, a Bachelor's of Science in Organizational Leadership, and Supervision with a Human Resource Certification, and a Master's of Science in Technology with a concentration in Human Resource Management from Purdue University. She is originally from Gary, Indiana. Her hobby and interests include reading, fitness, aerobics, spending time with family members and friends. And you guys, I'm going to put her information up here just in case you want to be able to get in contact with Miss Namia. You can reach her at namia.cooper77@yahoo.com. So just in case you need a few minutes to write that down, once again, that's Namia Cooper77@yahoo.com. So without further ado, I would like you all to please join me in welcoming our guest on today. All right, you guys, just let me.
Morning.
Good morning. So just give me a moment here.
Good morning.
I'm going to change my screen here. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on today. I'm so excited about the discussion on today. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into the program. Can you guys hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So this is a little bit lengthy, but I really want to take the opportunity to just set the tone for the discussion today. And so I'm going to just give a definition of what domestic violence is. And this is taken directly from the Wikipedia, and it says domestic violence, also named domestic abuse or family violence, is a violence or other abuse in a domestic setting, such as in marriage or cohabitation. Domestic violence is often used as a synonym for intimate partner violence, which is committed by one of the people in an intimate relationship against the other person. In its broadest sense, domestic violence also involves violence against children, teenagers, parents, or the elderly. It takes multiple forms, including physical, verbal, emotional, economic, and sexual abuse. Domestic violence often occurs when the abuser believes that abuse is an entitlement, acceptable, justified, or unlikely to be reported. It may produce an intergenerational cycle of violence in children and other family members who may feel that such violence is acceptable or condoned. Many people do not recognize themselves as abusers or victims because they may consider their experiences as family conflicts that got out of control. Awareness, perception, definition, and documentation of domestic violence differs widely from country to country. In abusive relationships, there may be a cycle of abuse during which tensions rise and an act of violence is committed, followed by a period of reconciliation and calm. The victims may be trapped in domestically violent situations through isolation, power and control, traumatic bonding to the abuser. Cultural acceptance, lack of financial resources, fear, shame, or to protect children as a result of abuse. Victims may experience physical disabilities, chronic health problems, mental illness, limited finances, and a poor ability to create healthy relationships. So that is the definition, a summary of domestic violence. So we're going to go right into the questions at hand, and I'm going to start with you, Sergeant Aubrey. What impact has the pandemic, COVID-19, had on domestic violence cases for the Hammond Police Department?
All right. I think domestic violence incidents in the United States, the studies show that it increased between 8 and 10% during the initial lockdown orders. Just to put that number in perspective, we're talking about 1,300 more domestic violent calls of service for 911 per day. 1,300 per day. So that number drastically increased during the initial lockdown. Wow. Since the initial lockdown, we're going up to about 10% now. So that number is everlasting, is increasing as we go. And there's a lot of contributing circumstances or factors that buy into this. Increased male unemployment. That's a stress factor. Stress associated with childcare or homeschooling. Even if the parent is working, they have to still figure out something for the kid to stay at home because schools were out. They were homeschooled. Increased financial insecurities as well that it caused a lot of stress in the household. But I'm gonna tell you this: the use of alcohol in the household has increased. Just to put that in perspective, alcohol sales have increased 54%. 54.
Wow.
Online sales, now get this number, 262% increase online sales of alcohol.
Wow.
So these are different factors that play into the increase of the calls for service for domestic violence in the last year and a half, last year.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then also, what has been law enforcement's response to domestic violence disturbance calls?
Okay, I want to talk about our initial approach to the call. We hear a lot of times when the initial call comes into 911, there's a lot of questions asked. If there's a weapon, where's the weapon? If it's locked up, if there's kids around. The initial caller gets frustrated because they think that help is not coming until those questions are answered. That's not the case. The person who's answering the questions are actually typing it in the computer, and a separate person is dispatching the police. So the police are actually on their way while these questions are being answered. But these are pertinent questions for the safety of you, your family, and responding officers. So we want to know what's going on before we get there. That's the initial thing. And I can understand the frustration. You want help and someone asking questions, but a lot of people don't understand the process. It's actually being input and someone else is actually dispatching that police, and they're on their way while you're answering these questions.
Okay. Wow.
Our initial approach to the house, you may get several police officers
Hmm.
because we don't know the situation we're walking into. We like to separate, and that's a two-pronged situation, just because we want to de-escalate the situation, one, and a person is more apt to tell us the truth if they're away from their assailant. So we try to separate the parties once we get there for those purposes.
Okay.
Captain Cox, anything to add about our approach usually?
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. The only other thing is if you're on the phone talking to a dispatcher and you're in distress, there you can let them know. You can, if you don't answer those questions, they're still going to send the police. If you're in a situation where you're afraid to answer those questions because the violent party may hear you and you're afraid that they're gonna, come in and intervene or hang up the phone on you or something, you can either just tell the dispatchers. Dispatchers tend to have some experience in that, so they'll understand if you can't give more information. They're gonna try to get it, but don't feel pressured that you have to get it if it's gonna be a detriment to your safety.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, gentlemen. So, Miss Namia, I'm going to jump right into the question for you and give us a brief overview of how domestic violence has impacted your life personally, and what were the warning signs? And did you or your abuser have a history of domestic violence in your family?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for having me this morning, and it's good to see Sergeant Aubrey again. We worked together when he was part of our domestic violence panel back in October, and it's good to meet Captain as well. But yeah, so I'll just kind of start with answering the question a little bit backwards, but I did have a history of domestic violence in my family, and I always share my grandmother was stabbed 32 times by her husband. My grandmother recently passed, but in her younger years, she was stabbed 32 times by her husband, and she survived. Um, so that's kind of where I know the history of domestic violence started in my family. And then my aunts, I had aunts who experienced domestic violence, and then I saw cases of mental abuse and things of that nature with my own mother in the home. So obviously there was a history of violence that I saw firsthand in the home, and obviously it trickled down to me. And when it initially the abuse initially started, I didn't realize or recognize that I was in an abusive relationship. What I thought was, this is just normal. This is what happens in relationships. This is the things that couples go through. This is what you experience. You fight, you argue, and then you make up, and all is good, and then the cycle starts over again. So I didn't even recognize that I was in an abusive situation first off. But it led to, in my younger adult years, this is when it occurred in my younger adult years. So it led to self-esteem issues and just trying to understand myself as a woman. And then I went on a spiritual path to kind of understand the situation for myself. So it was very harmful, and it took a lot of healing to get beyond that situation. But definitely had a history of abuse in my family, and my abuser saw abuse firsthand with his mother, and so he obviously picked up those traits, those anger traits. So it's not uncommon that either the victim of abuse or the abuser themselves have seen abuse in the home firsthand.
Wow. So did you ever find yourself defending the abuse and or feeling like it was your fault? If so, please explain.
Absolutely. I did a defend my abuser in the beginning because I didn't recognize that I was in an abusive situation. And so when you're in a relationship like that and you're young and you think you're in love, and this is just what happens in relationship, you tend to start to walk on eggshells. So the relationship evolved into one where I walked on eggshells. I didn't want to offend him in any kind of way, or do anything or say anything that would kickstart the abuse. And it didn't start off that way. Let me just say that there was a buildup to the physical abuse. It started off mental. And then it was social because I was withdrawn from family and friends and things of that nature. So it didn't start off in the beginning being physical. And I always share that if it had started off physical, obviously I wouldn't have stayed in the relationship, but there was a buildup to the physical abuse. But I did defend. I did often think that it was my fault if I just say the right thing, if I just do the right thing, if I don't do this, if I don't say that, then maybe that won't make him mad and angry to the point where he thought that there was a need to put hands on me or what have you, or escalated to physical abuse. I can remember one day clearly going into work, and it was after a night of physical abuse, and I had a mark under my eye where he had struck me. And it wasn't blaring black eye or anything like that, but you could tell that that something occurred. And so my excuse to my boss was, I have allergies and my eye is swollen. And, so things like that, I covered up for him, or really just blamed myself because I thought, I have to do things to not make him angry, to strike out and be physical towards him.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Miss Namia. Captain Elcox, I have a question for you. What is the impact of domestic violence on the family and children?
Well, it's easier for me to answer based on my experience. I did try to look up some stats and stuff like that, but the impact is almost immeasurable. There's no way of determining. There's no exact, this is exactly what the impact is going to be. It all depends on who's involved, the nature of the abuse, whether it's physical or mental, the personalities of the people involved, including the children, how individual people, and again, including children, how they cope with different situations. So each person, it's going to manifest itself differently. Some of the results or fallout from it can be, more violence between the siblings, of the kids that are witnessing this, even if they're not being abused. If they're exposed to it early enough and long enough, and they don't have better support, better examples, it almost becomes normal. Where they learn that this is how you cope, this is how you deal with conflict. If you have a disagreement, you lash out. If you're angry, you lash out. They don't learn any other coping skills. Sometimes they just take it as a matter of survival. They can get the simplified explanation would be, they get the attitude like only the strong survive. If I start lashing out and I'm stronger, then I don't get abused. Part of it, the parents, or the people that are doing the abusing, whether they're abusing the kids or just each other, if say it's the man is doing abusing and he's abusing his wife, and she explains it, or the kids overhear her explaining to somebody what's going on, how she explains it, how she perceives it, will color how they perceive it. Again, which could lead to more violence. It could lead to them being accepting that this is normal behavior and this is just the way that it should be. So it's almost impossible to tell exactly what the fallout is going to be. Kids can withdraw. They get sullen and just don't want to. They don't want to go anywhere. They can get clingy. If dad is abusing mom, the kids may want to stay under mom all the time and find some way to try to protect her or shift attention from her to themselves, even. Where they may try to be perfect kids, or they may get in trouble. Either way, trying to either not do something that's going to cause an episode, or be so perfect that maybe they don't become the target of it, or remove themselves from being a cause of it. Sometimes they'll blame themselves, for things, just like the victim may, like she said earlier, may at some point, blame yourself for setting something off. The kids may do the same thing. It's I've seen it personally where kids grow up in that environment and marry into it. They continue the same type of environment when they start their own relationships. To the point where I've heard statements like, "Well, he only does it because he loves me." It's a matter of this is how he expresses himself, or he loves me so much that it's frustrating, or anything like that. They just come up with excuses. And if the kids are hearing this, it just runs through their lives. One of the other results is losing friends and family who will start to kind of walk away or stay away, either because they feel like they're not allowed to help, or they just don't want to be in that position where they have to see it. There's different reasons. Everybody's perception is different. So like I said, it's hard to really say exactly what the ramifications are going to be of it. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I want to jump right back to Miss Namia, and I have a question for you because you talked about the cycle of abuse and how it started with your family and then it affected you and how you defended it. And so how did you break out of the cycle of abuse, and what was your breaking point?
Oh, my breaking point, when I realized I have got to get out of this situation or I may not live. At that point, I was in my young 20s, so I may not live to even see 25, was one evening when we came home from spending time with his family. We lived together, and he had been drinking. We both had been drinking, but a conversation about something that happened in my past. I think a letter that I had written to a high school boyfriend that had come up. He had been in my things and saw letters from when I was in my high school years. And that turned into him beating me profusely in the head on top of me. And he started to choke me to the point that I passed out. And when I passed out, I was going under, I could feel me losing my faculty. So I urinated. And so I was this close to death. And I remember that experience because it was like an out of body experience for me. I remember it was almost as if I was hovering over watching the situation. And I remember screaming out. I remember screaming out for Jesus. And at that point, he released me. It's like he wasn't himself. He came to, and he passed out for hours. And after that happened, I just remember thinking, I have got to get myself out of this situation. How did I find myself in this situation? One, but I have to get out of this situation. And I think it was at that point that I realized this is generational for me. having seen it in the home, having seen it in my family, the women in my family having a history of abuse. And I just did not want to carry on that generational, what I thought of as a generational curse. I don't want to pass this on to kids, you know, my family. And that was the breaking point. And I just knew at that moment that this is not something that I can't keep myself in this situation, or I won't live to, you know, this man will kill me eventually. He was this close tonight, and the next time it will be death. And so at that moment, you know, I can't say that I broke away right then and there, because you know, I tried to get away and break up and get restraining orders and all of that, but he continued to stalk me, at least for 2 years, even after breaking away, moving out of the apartment, and you know, finding somewhere else to live where he didn't know. But he continued to stalk me on my job. Sometimes I would go out to the car after the end of the day, and he would be parked right next to my car. I've been pulled in the car by gunpoint. There was just a lot that happened, and it took. I physically got away, but it took me a few more years to mentally break away from the situation. So I always say this to women who have never experienced domestic abuse, or those who haven't experienced it firsthand. There's always this perception that the woman is weak, or why would she stay in a situation? Well, unless you have experienced it for yourself, you cannot truly answer that question for another woman as to why she stayed. Because there are stages to the abuse, and she may break away physically, but the mental breaking away is definitely much harder. And so I just woke up and just realized that this is not the life that God intended and planned for me. And I'm so much better than this situation, and I don't want to carry this generational curse on to my family. You know, I didn't have children at the time. But I just thought about my future. This is not something I want to continue and to carry on in the family.
There was so many pearls of wisdom that you shared in your statement, Miss Namia, and I just want to just take a couple quick minutes to just acknowledge that and talk on that, because I believe I agree with you 100%. I've often said, you don't know, you never walked in my shoes, so how can you even speak on or say what I should and should not do? And I think that's so true, in you making that statement. And there's so many reasons why women stay in domestic violence situations. So I'm so glad that you shed light on that and you spoke to that. And I know that there's a lot of people that have tuned in today. And I just, first of all, want to thank you, as well as our other guests on today, for just sharing your insight, your words of wisdom, because I believe, and I've said it before, that all of us, whether we've experienced it directly or indirectly, each and every one of us that have logged in, we can understand domestic violence, whether it's happened to us or somebody that we know. And so I want to thank you so much for just being honest and sharing your truth, because I know that there's a lot of people that can relate to that as well. So my question for you now is, what was the most helpful thing that someone did for you while you were in that situation? And what words of advice would you give to someone that's still in the situation?
I think initially, in trying to break away, I made it harder on myself, because you have to remember, a woman coming out of that situation or in that situation, she feels a lot of guilt. She feels a lot of embarrassment. She feels a lot of shame. And I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, but at the time I was a college student in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I was away from family. I was away from my close circle of friends. So I didn't share what I was going through. A lot of what I went through and experienced, even my own mom didn't know until after I was well out of the situation, and I was to a point where I no longer felt shame or guilt, and I was able to share some of my experiences as a result of being in an abusive situation. But I think in the most helpful thing for me in coming out of that situation was hearing someone say, one, learning that I was not alone, that other individuals had experienced the same thing, or other women had experienced the same thing, and just, you know, taking on a spiritual path and learning that I was valued more than what the words that were said to me, or the abusive language, or, you know, being cussed out and being called out of my name, that I was way more valuable than someone's thought or angry opinion or abusive opinion about me. And so that, I think that was the most valuable thing that someone ever said to me, is that, you know, you're worth more than this. You don't have to continue in this cycle. You can break the cycle and come out of this, and you can heal from it. You can grow from it. You can learn from it, and you can be a voice for other young women who may be experiencing the same thing or have experienced the same thing, and let them know that you are not what the terms that were given to you in that abusive situation. You are not that. The totality of your womanhood is not that situation. And you can get beyond it.
One thing I want to add to that is there's power in numbers. And we just had somebody that logged in and she made a comment. So I want to thank all those that have tuned in. But Miss Adriana says, thank you for your story and wisdom. I wanted to stop the family generational abuse too by moving out of state and living a life of purpose for my children. So as we share our truth, I believe that there's a healing that takes place, but then it also, it helps others. So I definitely, once again, Miss Namia, I want to thank you for, I don't know if I want to say bravery or courage or strength or all of the above, but just to be a voice to other survivors out there. I just want to thank you so much. And to Sergeant Aubrey and Captain Elcox, I just want to thank you so much for your service and everything that you do on a daily basis to keep us safe. I just want to just extend my most gracious thank you to you all as well for that. Okay, so let's see where we at in the questions. And feel free, if there's anything that resonates with you all that's outside of the questions that you want to share, please feel free to add your comments to that as well. This question is for Captain Elcox. What advice would you give to those who have found themselves in an abusive relationship?
I found that giving advice can be kind of a precarious situation because we don't we don't fully know the situation. We don't fully know the mental state of the people involved. You know, we're just kind of going by what we pick up in the short time that we're in their presence. One of the things that I always try to, when I've had discussions with somebody in this situation on calls, is that generally the abuse doesn't just go away. You can't wait it out. It almost invariably continues and it gets worse over time. And, you know, my advice was always to, you know, that at some point that they would have to make a commitment to trying to get out of this relationship, out of this situation. And you have to be willing to do whatever it takes, because sometimes the violence escalates when you try to get out. I had to learn to not use my own opinions about what was going on or how I felt about it at the time, because I didn't have intimate knowledge about what was going on. I had never been in that situation. So you had to be careful not to trivialize it. And, you know, just to tell somebody, well, just get out, it's not that simple. And sometimes they have no idea even how to start. One of the things from listening to her that struck me was I wanted to know what a police officer, you know, responding to a call like that, what is it that would be most helpful from the police, from from your stance as having been in that situation before?
I agree with you. It is a very tricky situation. Sometimes women don't realize that they're in the situation. They take up for the abuser. They defend them the moment that the police come knocking at the door. But I would give this advice to police or anyone who comes in contact with a young woman or a person that's being abused in that situation. It just takes a lot of understanding about the dynamic of abuse. It's not cut and dry. It's not cut and dry because the abuser could go to jail and she could be back with the abuser the very next day, because it's very much a mental space that the woman is in. She's been torn down mentally. She's been torn down emotionally. And so the physical abuse doesn't come until in a lot of situations doesn't come until very later. And so breaking away physically, again, is the easy part. Breaking away emotionally and mentally is much harder. So it takes a lot of patience, giving that young lady resources. She may not be ready at that particular time, but giving her the resources and just saying, when you're ready, when you're truly committed to breaking away, here are the resources that are available to you to be able to do so safely. And I think that's the biggest thing that, from an officer standpoint, that you can offer, to coming armed with resources that are available to that young lady when she's really, truly ready to get away from that situation.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Captain Elcox, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to segue right into the next portion, which I'm going to piggyback off of Miss Namia, and she talked about resources. So Haven House NWI is one of the resources. So if you or you know of someone that is in a domestic violence situation, we have a 24-hour crisis line. You can call us. We have a caseworker available 24 hours a day. So you can reach us at 219-931-2090. I flashed this up on the screen a little bit earlier, but it's also, if you're wanting to find out more information about Haven House, you can reach us go to our website at havenhousenwi.org. Also, if you would like to support Haven House NWI, you can also make a charitable donation. We are accepting donations online as well, or you can contact us or make a check payable to Haven House Inc. So in terms of the resources, so Ms. Namia, you were talking about finding the resources. So in addition to us as a resource, I just wanted to provide a couple more phone numbers, because we may have some people that are outside of Northwest Indiana and they're looking for resources. So you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and that phone number is 1-800-799-SAFE, which is 7233. Once again, that number is 1-800-799-7233. If you're looking for services for elder abuse, the state line hotline is 1-800-992-6978. Once again, that number is 1-800-992-6978. For adult abuse, the hotline number is 1-800-222-8000. Once again, that number is 1-800-222-8000. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. Once again, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. If you're looking to file an order of protection in the state of Indiana, you can go to courts.in.gov. And then for the Victims Compensation Fund, it's 1-855 885-1555. So if you have any questions about any resources, if you need any referrals or advocacy, you can give us a call at the Haven House at 219-931-2090. Okay, so now at this time I'm going to do the call to action, and I would welcome if any of our guest speakers today, if you would like to add your input in terms of the call to action. So when I was preparing for this segment, I was trying to think about what I would say in terms of the call to action, because we have so many people on so many different platforms that's coming together, that's doing just amazing things and doing amazing things in the community. And so the thought for me with the call to action was to keep it simple. I remember one of my mentors many, many years ago, she had an event and she did a call to action. And so my thought with the call to action, many may be saying is, where do I get started? Or how can I make a difference? And simply, I believe that it's just starting by having that conversation. What are those things that pull at your heartstrings? Find like-minded people that have similar interests, just like we're doing today, and partner with them. Who is in your backyard? There are so many resources that you can tap into. And I'll give you one quick example. I think about many times as I drive down, as I'm driving on my way to work, and I pass by so many businesses. And I think to myself that these are all opportunities. These are all opportunities. These are all untapped resources. So start where you are, start in your own backyard, and begin to have those conversations. So that would be my call to action. So would you all, is there anything that you want to add for the call to action?
I think being observant. Sometimes we get locked up in our own little world. We don't see what's going on with other people. Just like Miss Naomi said when she came to work with her eye, swollen, or somebody's personality may change, or the demeanor may change, or you just paying attention to other people that's in your surroundings. You can see the change, and maybe you can step in and be a help to that person. Being observant, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Very true.
And I'll just say, in connection to, in parallel with Sergeant Aubrey, I think one of the worst things that we can do, and I see this a lot in our community, in the Black community, we don't want to get involved. We see it,
Yep.
And that's none of our business. And I get that, because trying to intervene in an abusive situation is could be potentially dangerous in the day and age that we're living in. But on top of observing, if you see something, if you suspect something, if you're driving down the street and you see a couple arguing and it's our natural inclination to say we don't get involved. That's none of our business. But sometimes we have to just kind of make that call and say, hey, this is what I see. This is what I observe. I don't know if this is what's happening. And then go on about your business, because that could be that one phone call or that one moment of intervening could save someone's life. And I think a lot of times we just don't want to get involved. We may hear it, the neighbors next door, and it may sound like a situation that we don't want to involve ourselves in. But there's ways to intervene without physically having to intervene in the situation. So I just say, if you see something, just say something. Make a phone call to the police officer. Make a phone call just to kind of ensure that, to do a safety check, just to ensure that person is safe. We can't always close a blind eye to everything and just label it as that's not our business.
That's so true. Captain Elcox, anything you want to share? Captain Elcox?
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
was muted.
Oh,
I would just kind of repeat what she said earlier about the value of resources, the value of being able to give somebody resources or options for help and assistance. And trying to get out of their situation. And then also letting, you can be involved sometimes without being involved. Sometimes letting somebody know that you're paying attention is enough to modify their behavior. If you give off the vibe or make it obvious that you're going to ignore whatever's going on, you're giving them the green light to do whatever they want to do. You're empowering that person to continue. But if you let them know you're paying attention and that you're liable to say something or you're liable to call the police or something like that, then you force them to modify their behavior. And again, based on listening to what she was saying, making sure that people know that you care, that you are concerned. And that you don't hold them, you don't lay any guilt on them. You don't treat them as though it's their fault. I guess that would fall under, trying to be understanding, empathetic. But I get the impression that those things will go a long way towards helping the situation. So you don't necessarily have to go running over there and kick in a door and try to intervene physically in a fight in order to be of help to somebody.
That's so true. Well, I would like to thank my special guest on today. Once again, thank you so very much for your time and being a part of Advocates for Change. And just to bring everything together, Advocates for Change, we're all advocates. Anytime we are passionate about something, we want to see change, we want to help someone, we want to speak on their behalf, we're advocates. So as I mentioned earlier, look for opportunities and ways, and it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. You can just, even the little things make a difference. So I want to encourage you all to find ways within your community that you can be advocates for someone else. Once again, I cannot thank you all enough for being my special guest today. I know that this is going to be so helpful to a lot of people out there, and just being that voice. I want to encourage those that have tuned in. You've tuned in for Advocates for Change. I want to encourage you to share this information with someone else, because you never know, somebody may need to get this information. So, and I thank you once again also for the viewers that have tuned in, because one of the things that I love to say is that our time is one of our most valuable resources, and you could have been anywhere, but you took an hour out of your time to spend it with us, and for that I am truly grateful. So once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Advocates for Change. You have a wonderful day. I would like to say Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there. You have something, Ms. Namia?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just going to say, if I may, just for a moment, because I would be remiss if I do not do so. I want to acknowledge my sorors of the Gary Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and also our president, soror Shana Carruthers. I just want to we want to thank you again for allowing us to just kind of share and share what some of the things that we do. We are, as a chapter, we are very big on advocating for change. One of our national initiatives is to ensure that we're bringing awareness and educating the public on domestic violence. We just underwent a project where we collected toiletries, feminine hygiene products, hair care products, and things of that nature to distribute to the local women's shelters within Northwest Indiana, Haven House being one of them. And so we just thank you for the opportunity just to invite us today to be a part of the Advocates for Change program. And we look forward to partnering with you in the future for future programming.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Sergeant Aubrey, Captain L. Cox, is there anything you want to say in terms of services with the Hammond PD? Anything you want to say in closing?
Call 911. Don't ever feel like anything is too minor to call. We love, if it's too minor, we're still going to come. We'd rather for you to call, not come. Never feel like you're bothering the police. I've heard that before. I don't want to bother you. It wasn't important
Yeah.
enough. I'd rather go to that call than drive around and go to a missing cat call or something like that. That's really not important. Police officers are waiting for those type of calls. Never feel like we're bothered. We're not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you all again. I look forward to our future partnership together. I'm so excited. I believe that this is just the start of very many great and amazing things to come. So I thank you also for your time as well. And you all have a wonderful rest of the evening. And please, please, please share this, share this, share this. Hashtag share. So thank you all once again, and you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.